Okay, welcome everyone this afternoon. Council time, calling to order Wednesday, September 17th, 2025. Let's start with the roll call.
Councillor Young,
Here.
Councillor Belcock,
Present.
Councillor Fuentes,
Here.
Councillor Little,
Here.
and Chair Marshall.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, then moving on to public comment, and just to say public comment is on agenda items only. Oh, amendments to the agenda. Thank you, Councillor Fuentes. Are there any amendments to the agenda?
None
Sure.
today.
I have a,
Sorry.
that was okay. I have an amendment to the agenda and under new business. I would like to discuss a resolution condemning political violence in the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Okay, is this something that we need to, counselors, or on adding to the agenda, or just a procedural question?
I would assume so, yes.
Okay, is there another counselor who would want to add that to the
I would
agenda?
support that.
Okay, added to the agenda 5.3. All right, thank you. Then moving on to public comment on agenda items only. Is there anyone in the room?
Tanya Enger.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanya Inger. I had the pleasure of joining you for the Trust Lands visit on Friday, which was insightful and informative. It was helpful to hear DNR officials and explain the status quo of their management practices in their own words. I'm glad the council is taking the initiative to be more informed about this aspect of county resource management. There was a lot of information presented, and you've all been sent a list of my complete thoughts. However, there was still a lot left unsaid and unseen regarding what we saw. For example, they did not mention that the stop where they showed us the old growth stand by the roadside is exactly the future site of proposed sale Wheelhouse, which is adjacent to the Dabbler site. Which was at that time some of the best and most carbon dense habitat. This demonstrates my point that DNR is not forthcoming with their harvest plans, even when it will be affecting the county's carbon emissions reductions goals. I will yet again point out that they have not provided project specific carbon emissions data for their proposed sales. And it seems pretty obvious that this data of carbon sequestration of these areas might be pertinent info when constructing our state-mandated climate change goals. When asked about climate change, how it factors into the policies that justify the harvest of turnover, dabbler, and other high-value forest lands, my question was not answered and still goes unanswered. The only climate change policy they mention in their SEPA checklist is HB 2528, which unfortunately makes a general statement about sustainable forestry, which the DNR is essentially using to greenwash their harvest plans. These are unprecedented times, and this carbon emissions data is not just a nice to have, but extremely crucial and should be made available. I would encourage the council to establish an ongoing rapport with DNR so that we can maintain transparency in regards to information relevant to these county carbon goals. I also want to urge the council to pursue the NCS land swap carbon funding as soon as possible so that Clark County can establish a proactive stance in securing all available tools to help us manage our natural resources responsibly. Finally, I was frankly not satisfied with the answer they gave for how much economic return is coming back to Clark County. The Stimson mill that is using lumber from the Dabbler is in Clatskanie and not Clark County. When it comes to irreplaceable forests, we should be absolutely certain that what we are gaining is worth what we are losing. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
That is all that's in the room. I do have one caller online.
Okay.
Caller, you've been sent a request to unmute. Please go ahead and do so. State your name for the record and go ahead with your comment.
Good afternoon, Kimberly Goheen Elbin. Thank you, Michelle Belcott, for bringing up Charlie Kirk. Christians are made stronger with this resolve of trying to stop violence. Actually, until Jesus Christ comes back, there will always be violence. In fact, there won't be peace on earth, as what we would like, for sure. I do notice that, of course, these are sinful people that do this kind of thing. But I've noticed also in general, just as living, the godly people know how to have self-control. It's one of the 9 fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So that's the bottom line in today's world. We have taken God out. One huge proof would be, of course, murderous assassinations such as this, and it goes around all over the world, but that we have polluted the earth to death. I've been blessed actually to come upon quite a few documentaries showing throughout time. I'll just go back to the 1940s and 50s of how Africa or Asia or Europe, America, we have polluted the earth to death. That is the main thrust for Agenda 21 2030. Get all the cars out and the emissions and this and that. I'm going to ask this council to educate the whole United States, if you can. Our insects are dying. There aren't insects around.
Chair, point of order.
And they're not
Yes,
in my
please state your
windshield.
point of order.
I don't understand where she's going with this. So I'd like for her to stay on track with agenda items only.
Okay. Could you speak to the agenda
Oh, well, I
items? I think
appreciate
you're
that. Sure.
veering off.
Okay. Yeah, well, not really, but we're talking about a big picture here that you guys don't like to hear, so that's okay. I'll continue, and Charlie Kirk is with God right now, resting. So thank you. I'm going to go to the prenatal agenda that you have. My daughter, one of my twin daughters, took 2 COVID jabs, and she recently gave birth, and so of course they're in my prayer constantly, daily, all my children. And I'm going to be taking inventory on that little child to see what exactly happens to a parent that took the COVID shot. So be made aware of that. That is my main thrust in life right now, is what has happened in this world today. Brings it back down to Charlie Kirk. The last 5 years of the pandemic has brought chaos. I've mentioned that before. And just want to say God is always good.
Okay, thank you. Your time is up. Is there anyone else?
That concludes public comment.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to old business, minutes of September 10th, 2025. Are there any corrections? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to approve minutes of September 10th, 2025.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. On to new business, 5.1 down payment assistance program grant application resolution. Jordan?
Good afternoon, Council. For the record, Jordan Bogie, Senior Policy Analyst. Pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. First of a few items I have for you today. This is a resolution that is required as part of Washington State's Department of Commerce. They currently are in the midst of a grant solicitation. They have about $70 million of funding available statewide for various affordable housing related projects. And the Treasurer's Office would like to apply for an additional $3 million for the county's down payment assistance program. This is the county program that is administered in conjunction with both the Treasurer's Office and the Washington Housing Finance Commission. And as part of the application for this funding, it requires a resolution from the legislative body of the applicant. So in this case, you as the council with the county applying. And so as you'll see here on the screen, we've drafted a resolution and looking to get council approval. As you see here, the whereas clauses are pretty much taken straight from the authorizing language when council first created the Affordable Down Payment Assistance Program. And then the resolution itself states that the county council supports and authorizes the treasurer's office to submit this application to the Washington State Department of Commerce. And so happy to take any questions you might have, but ultimately looking to see if council is supportive of moving forward with this resolution.
Okay, we can do a thumbs up. I don't know if Treasurer Topper was online or wanted to add anything to this.
I am not sure if she is
Not
available
that she
today.
needs to, but I think we're all familiar with this. So move forward with this, council? Yep. I think thumbs up all around. I'd like to just call out Treasurer Topper for taking the initiative on this. This has been a very successful program, giving people the opportunity for home ownership. That's very important. So a good shout out to the treasurer. Okay, 5.2.
Wonderful. Thank you, council. And just as a note, that resolution will come back at a Tuesday meeting for final approval of that resolution. The second item I have for you, 5.2, is a draft resolution related to access to prenatal care, particularly for those on Medicaid in Clark County. The county council, as the Board of Health, a few months ago directed our public health department to start working on access issues that have been identified, particularly for those who are pregnant, they're expecting, and they're on Medicaid. It can often take months and can be very difficult to access care. And so our public health department has been working on different policy options that we have to help support access to care. And so we have this draft resolution put together. And as you'll see, the resolution is really related to the importance of access to high quality care. The whereas clauses talk about the benefits of prenatal care, both for the mothers and the children. It describes how, we have certain targets for the number of folks in our community who should ideally be able to access care, and that we are below those thresholds. Also the whereas clauses talk a little bit about how inadequate access to care disproportionately impacts vulnerable folks, and that really is the policy of the county that everyone who needs access to care should be able to receive it. And so, Michelle, if you'll scroll down to the actual what is being resolved portion. So the Board of Health and Clark County Public Health, would you mind scrolling? Thank you. Perfect. So what actually would be resolved in this at a future Board of Health meeting, and really what we're hoping for to get from council today is your thoughts, any potential edits you might have, anything you want to tweak between now and a future Board of Health meeting where this resolution would be presented. It would involve, basically what it would do is direct public health to support efforts to formulate and implement payment reform initiatives that address and reduce deficiencies in pregnancy-related care, to support opportunities to strengthen the maternal health care workforce, to champion efforts to increase data quality and transparency of healthcare access, particularly for those on Medicaid, to define a legislative agenda and engage in a legislative process around healthcare access. And I will also note that our delegation has already been involved in an initial convening, and they are aware that this is an issue that Clark County is really interested in, to convene elected officials and relevant state agencies to collaboratively develop solutions, to support and champion public-private partnerships and multi-sector models for innovative work, to promote strategic partnerships between the feds, the state, and local government public health agencies, federally qualified health centers, healthcare systems, and community organizations, and also to prioritize seeking new funding and to allocate existing fund sources to support access to pregnancy-related care efforts. And so present this to you today for your consideration, for any thoughts you might have on this resolution, to make sure that it is what you as the Board of Health would like to say and give direction to public health around access to prenatal care for those on Medicaid and beyond. And if you have specific questions, we have Dr. Melnick and Haley Pickus also available, as well as I think a couple of folks from some community partner organizations that public health has been working with to answer any specific questions the council might have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from council?
Yeah, sorry if I missed this, but did this come from the PHAC, the advisory council?
This came, I think there's been some discussion of this with FAC, but the initial guidance was provided by the Board of Health, council as Board of Health at a previous Board of Health meeting. I can't remember exactly when that was. I think it was maybe in May or June when this was first discussed.
Okay, I just want to clarify if we have concurrence with the community members that advise us.
And I think we do have a couple folks online. I'm not sure if they can speak to how much public health has talked to FAC about this particular resolution.
Hi, this is Haley Pickus for the record, Clark County Public Health. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, just fine.
Yes, great. So the Public Health Advisory Council is up to speed. They receive, similar presentations back in April. Jordan was when we first discussed this and got direction from the board to work on a resolution and convene that policy summit in June. And FAC has been supportive throughout. They received a copy of the resolution and will be reviewing it at their meeting next week as well to provide feedback.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you very much for bringing this forward. Will this be something that we formally adopt as the Board of Health at our next meeting?
That is correct. And I would, and I'll check with our public health staff. I assume it's the next meeting unless there are, enough changes that it needs to be workshopped a little bit further. But bringing it to you here to have the discussion before it does come at an upcoming Board of Health meeting.
I think it's very good. I think it reflects the concerns that the council expressed and also the forum that was held, I believe in June, that really brought together a number of stakeholders to talk about this. So thumbs up from me all around. Great. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Melnick and Haley, for your work on this. I appreciate it.
And thank you. And I believe it's on the agenda for the Board of Health meeting next week. So unless there are any tweaks to it, or it sounds like there won't be any, yeah, we'll see you. We'll look forward to this and thank you so much.
Great. Thank you. Okay, moving on then to item 5.3, Councillor Belcott.
Thanks, Chair. I have a sample resolution that I apologize for the very small font. I'm having some issues with my printer today. And then also for copy for Kat. So the resolution that I am proposing, like I mentioned, is condemning political violence and assassination of Charlie Kirk. I thought that it would be prudent as a county council for us all to stand united against any forms of political violence. Just today, I found out that there is something brewing in Battleground that is, they're planning on some inciting of violence and activities this Sunday, which is not okay. I thought I'd read the resolution in full and then maybe Jordan could wordsmith it per usual whenever we give copies of resolutions or look at reviewing it. A resolution condemning political violence and the assassination of Charlie Kirk, whereas the United States was founded upon the principles of liberty, justice, and the inherent rights of all people as recognized in Declaration of Independence, and whereas the Constitution and Bill of Rights guarantee the freedom of speech, press, religion, and assembly, which are essential to the preservation of a free and self-governing people. And whereas the assassination of Charlie Kirk, a national political and religious leader and advocate, is a tragic and intolerable act of political violence that strikes at the very heart of these constitutional freedoms. And whereas political violence in any form undermines the rule of law, threatens civil order, and attempts to silence lawful expression through fear and force. And whereas the Clark County Council affirms that while citizens may differ in their views, such differences must always be expressed through peaceful and lawful means, never through threats, intimidation, or violence. And whereas our nation's founders recognized that governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, and that consent must be expressed through free debate, lawful assembly, and fair elections, not by coercion or bloodshed. And whereas it is the duty of both government leaders and private citizens to reject violence, defend constitutional liberty, and uphold the natural rights endowed by our Creator. Now, therefore, be it ordered and resolved by the Clark County Council, State of Washington, as follows. The Clark County Council unequivocally condemns political violence in all forms, including the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and declares that acts of violence shall never be tolerated as legitimate tools of political expression. This council urges all citizens to reaffirm their commitment to the principles of the Constitution and Bill of Rights, to resolve differences peacefully, and to protect the freedom that secure our republic.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you for this, Councilor Belcott. I'm wondering if you would be open to trying to incorporate other types of violence in this. I was just thinking of the kids that were shot on their first day of school attending Catholics as just another example of violence that we're trying to decrease. And this is the first time I've seen this, so I was trying to think where it could be incorporated. But in the resolution, we could say violence in all its forms, including school violence and the assassination of Charlie Kirk as one example of something we could say.
I would be open to that, definitely.
Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Belko, for bringing this to our attention. I couldn't agree more with you that it is important that this governing body condemns political violence in all of its forms. I would also like the record to show that there was a recent political assassination. Melissa Hortman, Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives, was assassinated along with her husband on June 14th as part of a political hit. And so I would also wonder if you would be okay with including that in this resolution.
Well, it does mention all forms.
As a recent example, I think it would there would be value in actually naming the Speaker of the Minnesota House and the recent assassination, which was only a couple of months ago.
So you want to go through and name every single event?
I don't think that's what he said.
I just mentioned her name as a recent political assassination.
Chair.
Yes, please go ahead.
I think these are good points. I think that we could, first of all, I would like to say that I don't see this being about Charlie Kirk. To me, this is about one American willing to murder another over political views and beliefs. That's the tragedy that has happened. You know, if there are recent other examples, I wouldn't be opposed to adding those and just, you know, having this about not necessarily the direct assassination of Charlie Kirk, but the fact that Americans are murdering Americans for political purposes. I don't know how you would wordsmith that, but, and if we want to name Charlie Kirk and the other recent individuals that were murdered as an example, I would be okay with that. I also would like to see if we can add a little bit more into this about contact or conflict resolution, and a little bit more about how people can resolve their differences without turning to violence. That's a tall order to ask, so I don't, and just having seen this, I don't really have any suggestions for how to do that, but I'm, you know, we can condemn violence, but we also need to be proponents of ways that people can solve their differences in a peaceful way.
I respectfully decline leaving Charlie Kirk's name out of this. In 2021, the council specifically named George Floyd in a resolution and opposing violence with that situation. And in all of these recent situations that were mentioned, there was no conflict resolution. Even none of those people knew what was coming to them. So how could you resolve any conflict if you didn't know what was happening?
I'm not suggesting the victim be the one that do the conflict resolution. I'm just speaking in terms of people need to change how their thoughts are processing. They need to, if they're, experiencing, I mean, we had just last week, we had the proclamation on Suicide Prevention Month. Just people need to have access to more resources, ways that they can turn to get help when they're looking at violence and or suicide.
I absolutely agree on your mention of suicide on the Tuesday night proclamation. But this is murder and assassination, which is a whole other situation.
Okay, I think I would lean toward a more broadly worded statement. I know there's a lot of pain. Tension is high. This was someone that a lot of people look to. But I think also that a lot of people look to those leaders in Minnesota. So I think, and it's regrettable that it seems to be, some sort of scorekeeping of who mentions which person has been shot. I think that's not the way to look at this. The way to look at this is to look at all violence. And I agree, if there could be some statement about other ways to resolve our differences or some statement related to unity and coming together and not continuing to perpetuate divisive rhetoric. Just some thoughts, but this is a tall task for you, Jordan, to try to figure out how to accommodate all the thoughts and feedback that is being provided. But I think, maybe there's a couple of options that you could bring back to us that captures some of what we have said. I don't know if everybody will be satisfied with everything, or we could give you feedback, because it's hard to really digest this just on the spot. But I'm for moving something forward and, figuring out what that something might be at this point. And it sounds like others are as well, although there's not agreement on the exact wording of it. That's my summary of where we're at. Other comments by council members? Go ahead.
Just as you're trying to figure out the wording on that first sentence, we could just talk about violence in general and remove the word political, including school violence and the assassination of Charlie Kirk, and if we wanted to add anybody else. But the last sentence could have a proactive statement of what the council will do to promote solutions on conflict resolution, et cetera, or provide funding towards these solutions, something like that.
And then also include something about student violence on students.
Well, that would be included if we added that in the first sentence.
Great. That sounds pretty good.
So just to clarify, you're not going to include Charlie Kirk's name, though in previous resolutions, George Floyd was mentioned.
Okay, I don't think that's what you suggested
No.
at all.
I'm not
No.
saying Councilor Little suggested that. I'm
Oh.
saying when you summarize, Chair, leaving Charlie Kirk's name out.
No, I recognize there are different opinions. I didn't say specifically to leave his name out. I think if his name is in, maybe other names would be in, but I'm dismayed by this scorekeeping kind of thing that just does not seem appropriate to me.
I'm not mentioning this as a scorekeeping. It's a terrible, awful thing that's occurred.
I that was not at all pointed at you. I think just in the rhetoric nationally, that political pundits seem to be doing that. But please, that was not directed at you in any way, Councilor Belcott.
Yeah, and Council Belcott, I certainly wasn't suggesting to remove Charlie Kirk's name either. I think that, you know, that first sentence condemning political violence and assassinations, demonstrating examples like Charlie Kirk and Melissa Hornet, because these are the most recent examples of political violence that we all heard over the last couple of months. I think there'd be value in that, but I certainly wasn't recommending removing his name either.
Okay, is that clear enough for you, Jordan?
Yes, I will take your. I've written down some notes here based on the conversation. I will draft up a second copy of this resolution based on what Councilor Belcott has provided, and then what I've heard from Council, I will email it out to all of you within the next day or so. So please feel free to provide any individual input via email, and I will bring this back next Wednesday for Council to give a final approval if that works for timing.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yes, go ahead.
If I may add, of all the stuff I was saying before, I just think unity, I think, is the key. You know, unity, sorting through our differences and tolerating them.
Thank you for that. And I do just want, I thank you, Councilor Belcott, for bringing this up. I do want to just follow up. You mentioned when you started out that there was some kind of incitement of violence in Battleground. Do you have any details about that?
Yeah, I was going to send that to you, Chair, because it's in your district, but there is someone that is recommending that the peaceful protests or individuals on Sunday in Battleground are they're trying to incite rioting and violence and putting like locks in socks and attacking the people who are attending the vigils in Battleground.
Yeah, I would encourage you to contact the sheriff related to that, both in Battleground and the county. Okay, that's hard enough to swallow. Okay, I think we'll move on with our agenda. Okay, councilor reports.
I have a few.
Oh, good.
The Opioid Abatement Council met this week and discussed a proposal from the mental health sales tax, which would be to consider funding one of the jail requests through the mental health sales tax to be funded through the Opioid Abatement Council. And it in the attempt from, maybe I should let Councilor Little comment on that part, the mental health sales tax part, because I'm not on that board. You want to start on that?
Okay. The Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Committee or board, we met and approved a lot of really wonderful internal projects that will do good for our community. It was suggested that one of the proposals was opioid treatment in the jail for individuals, and it was suggested that it was a better fit for the opioid fund. Even legal had the opinion that it was better suited and possibly only suited for that fund as well. So we carried it from that request from the Mental Health Sales Tax Committee to the Opioid Committee that Councilor Young is reporting on. Do you want to continue from there?
Either way, I'm okay. Either way.
Go for it.
Okay. So essentially, there was some discussion about process. The Opioid Abatement Council is a little bit different than the Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Board in that the Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Board, the ultimate decision maker on those funds is the council. Whereas with the Opioid Abatement Council, the ultimate decision authority lies with the council itself. The council can certainly send recommendations and such. But we kind of discussed, this is a little bit different than normal, similar to how the bridge shelter was a little bit different and outside of the process. And so this coming meeting, we're going to be having a discussion on the charter of the Opioid Abatement Council so that we can essentially potentially clarify some of those process issues. One of the things that I had brought up is, our boards and commissions do need to be empowered. One example is with Columbia River Mental Health. We saw, I mean, there was just this potential for a massive void in the community. And I think there should be the ability for the Opioid Abatement Council, and personally also for the Mental Health Sales Tax Advisory Board, to immediately attempt to address something like that outside of the RFP process. So a little bit more flexibility in how those funds are used. The intent is an RFP, but there can be times where it's used for things outside of that normal process. Anyway, thought I would share a little bit about what we are currently working through, and we're slated to review that again, I think in October, to come back to that.
I just add a little bit.
Absolutely.
So it was a $500,000 request. And the whole reason why we have this request is that the state fund decided to cut funds completely for that pot of money. And so it has been, it's now on our shoulders to try to fund that very important program. So that I would suggest that that become an item for our legislative delegation discussion. And I would hope that that would be a high priority to try to recapture that funding at the state level so that we don't have to bear that burden ourselves.
I would just like to comment that it's great, Councillor Little, to have some overlap between these two funds so that they can be better coordinated. You know, one thing that came up in the mental health sales tax discussion was concern that with the jail population, for treatment to start and then have to stop because of lack of funding would be a terrible thing. So I'm glad we're all talking together. Thanks for bringing it up. You have other items?
Yes, I do. The next thing was I just wanted to share that I was able to, unfortunately, it was on the same day as the Peace and Justice Fair, so attendance probably would have been a little bit larger, but NAMI Southwest Washington held their annual Shine the Light Suicide Summit, a summit on suicide prevention. There was some very deep conversation that took place. People shared some really personal experiences and times of pain that they've experienced either themselves or from loved ones. It was a great event. It was enlightening to me. And, you know, the biggest thing is that suicide is closer to us all than we could ever imagine. And so keep our ears and eyes open for those individuals suffering. And the best thing we can do is offer companionship and friendship and support to people when they're suffering. And then the last thing that I would like to bring up is regarding the 1590 funds that we discussed a couple weeks ago, relative to the email that Jordan sent us on whether or not the funds themselves can be used to facilitate a conversation and a process how we determine how those funds will be used. So I just, you know, my support behind 1590 is having a robust process whereby we figure this out. And now that we know that there's not going to be the funding available, I think it's something that we should bring back. But I don't know, you know, I don't know where staff are at with looking into what could be possible, but ultimately we're going to have to discuss funding for that, I would imagine.
Are you referring to funding to administering the funds?
No, so we had the discussion about, you know, what process we're going to have to where we figure out how we're going to use those funds. And we were hoping to be able to fund that process using $1590.
Right.
But we can't.
Okay. So it has to be administered by in-house staff.
Well, I would still suggest that if we need outside support that we use it. And I
Okay.
would support the use of funds to make sure that process does unfold. But I don't know how far staff is on that because.
So
Just a little clarification. So you're talking about hiring a consultant to help us figure out a process to distribute those funds. Should we move forward with that funding, which hasn't been decided yet?
Correct. Yeah, that's essentially, for me, it's about accountability and being effective with the use of the funds.
So just to give you an update, Council, on where things are at. So we got direction, I think, very end of August. The council wanted to move forward with looking into what would it mean to take the 1590 funds and get some information drafted for council for you to ultimately approve. We had that conversation. I immediately went on vacation for a couple of weeks. And so the meeting, I actually have a meeting scheduled with some other staff to begin talking through the parameters of what that would even look like early next week. And so we'll bring some information to you after that. As Councilor Young mentioned, I reached out to MRSC to see if in the allowable uses of those funds, could you hire a consultant to help develop a plan about basically how to implement the funds, how to use them most effectively. MRSC got back to me and said, based on our reading of the statute, not an allowable use of that funding. So if we were to, as Councilor Young says, kind of put together a plan about how those funds would be used, it would probably have to be internal staff or the council. We would have to probably do that in-house or utilize a different funding source to hire some folks to help put that plan together. And so, still some more to come, but we are working through that. And hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I'll have more information for council to consider on that.
Great. Thank you. Anything else, Councilor Young?
That's it.
Okay, thank you. Other council reports? Okay, let's move on then to work session requests.
None today.
Okay. Then policy updates, DNR Trust Land Tour recap. You can kick that off, and I think some of the council will chime in.
Perfect. Thank you, Chair. So yeah, I just wanted to have this on the agenda, both to give council an opportunity to discuss any follow-up, as well as just kind of generally inform the community about the tour that council went on. So really appreciative to Department of Natural Resources staff. We had a number of folks, regional staff, and a few of the state level staffers that came down and gave council and a number of community members a tour of several different sites up in the northeast part of the county where a lot of the timber activity is. The DNR talked about a little bit of their history, how they came to manage these trust lands when essentially they were logged over and then landowners weren't paying their taxes in the 1920s. Foreclosures happen at the county level. Well, counties don't have the ability to manage all this land, so the state took them over and they manage them now in trust for counties. So we talked a little bit about that. We talked about habitat conservation and some of the work that was done to protect some of the forests for habitat management. In particular, the marbled murrelet, salmon, and the spotted owl were some of the main species that were talked about. We looked at different types of timber harvesting activities that happen. So that's thinning, that's variable retention harvesting, where it's not, the DNR doesn't like the word a clear cut, but it is a cut where you remove most of the trees in a particular area and you're leaving 8 or maybe a little bit more per acre, and protecting some of the riparian habitat and some of the natural features, and just kind of how they design the sales so that they are working to conserve contiguous blocks of habitat per the habitat conservation plan that they have, but then sort of cutting around the edges of those in order to preserve habitat, and their general strategy. They talked about the fact that it typically takes about 5 years to plan a timber sale. So the timber sales that we have been seeing come before council that are in the SEPA process, that were during this pause over the last 6 or 8 months that we've been talking about, these were getting planned 5-6 years ago sometimes, and how the commissioner's new order to protect 77,000 acres across the state really impacts future sales that might be in the planning process now, not ones that have been part of the pause. So sales that have gone through SEPA, they are still slated to move forward, even if they are maturation 2, which is the more complex structure of forest. And so those are things like the turnover timber sale, which we did see directly. And one of the things that was also discussed was the need, the DNR manages on longer rotations for timber, which provides for kind of a different mix of wood that is, more valuable in different ways. Private timber industries are managing on shorter rotations, great for maybe like a 2x4, not so good for like the Portland Airport's new mass timber structure and things like that. And so it was a really good conversation. I know I learned a lot. I hope council did too. One thing that was also mentioned is the possibility of the county getting more engaged in the DCS land swap program. So this is where you would take forest land at risk of converting into like a neighborhood or other type of use, and you would conserve it and swap it out for an existing acreage of timber. You would put that existing acreage into long-term conservation, and then you would manage the new parcel per DNR regulations. And so what you would do by doing that is keep the trust beneficiaries whole, because part of the conversation is that the revenue from these timber sales helps to fund local government services, fire, EMS, school districts, and the county itself. And so I will pause there, but that's just wanted to give a little bit of an overview for the community. I saw there was a nice article about it in the Columbian today as well. If folks are interested, they can check that out. And yeah, just open that up for any council conversation or direction that you might have coming out of that.
Thank you, Jordan. Really good summary. Comments from council?
Thank you. We also got a very comprehensive overview of the visit from one of our community members via email.
Great. Any other comments? Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for that overview. I just want to highlight a couple things that were new to me, and some good news and some bad news. The interesting news was that 4,800 acres of the 77,000 that were in that protective order were in our county. I had been on the assumption that we were skipped over or didn't have very many. 4,800 acres is significant. If you think about that as a block, the Wilderness Act, you can have a wilderness area at minimum of 5,000 acres. And I think the closest wilderness to us is Trapper Creek, which is very close to that 5,000 acres. So that's impressive. Disappointed that turnover is not being paused and included in this conservation order, because it is maturation too, I think completely. But I am encouraged that they have heard us on being kind of a pilot project for this swap program, which will not only keep the county whole financially on those acres that are swapped, but it also protects those private timberlands and keeps them in working. Instead of converting them to another use, it keeps them in working timberlands, which is also beneficial to our county. So good and bad.
Great. And I don't know if you want any, things I was thinking of as far as following up with. I know some counties have, DNR has established committees of the junior taxing districts, the trust beneficiaries, and I think that would be something worth pursuing. I think one of the objectives with that is that for those junior taxing districts, they could know what might be coming up and better plan for any revenue that might be coming their way at some point, because I think it's just like, oh, surprise. And just to mention those 4,800 acres, there's a little bit here and a little bit there. So good news that they found additional lands to be protective of, but also just to note that they're still refining their overall statewide map. And it sounded like some of the DNR folks that we met with are still trying to wrap their heads fully around that. I'm heartened also about the potential for a land swap. I think as a result of the letters that we've sent and the tour that we took, we're better positioned. We're on the radar screen, so that's a good thing. And that also, Commissioner Up the Grove is, I think they're still looking very much at all of the lands and other strategies for revenue generation, like carbon credits and recreation. So those are some things we can kind of keep on our radar screen as well. Any other thoughts related to that? Just a big thanks to DNR. There were a number of DNR folks. They spent some time planning this tour for us, and it was really very informative. And I think I came away just really realizing the hard work that goes into managing and protecting our forests. So go ahead, Councillor Young.
Thank you. And same thing, I just wanted to give a big thanks to them. I think this was a really productive time well spent. And a couple things that I gleaned. One was there was, I think traditionally there hasn't been a lot of communication between the county and DNR on this issue, but it was largely because we didn't express interest. So previously, there's not been very much interest expressed in this subject. So that was interesting. The other thing that I really enjoyed learning is that they're doing much more than just harvesting trees. I mean, they are actively trying to make the habitat better in a lot of areas, and that is one way that they are able to pay for some of those improvements is through the harvest of trees in appropriate areas. And that's what we're all talking about right now, is where is appropriate to use. But otherwise, yeah, just it was a great time well spent, and I'm grateful for the time that they spent, as well as the community members that came along with us.
And thank you, Jordan, for being the liaison between DNR and us. Okay, 8.2, broadband equity, access and deployment. We're on the verge of deployment.
We are. Thank you, Chair. Yeah. So just wanted to give you an update, councilors. As you know, I've been here over a little over 2 years now, and the whole time I've been here, we've been talking about BEAD. So just a recap, as part of the Infrastructure and Jobs Act that was passed in 2021, it provided a lot of money for states to receive funding from the federal government for broadband infrastructure updates. Washington was pretty well on it, and has been working towards accessing $1.2 billion of federal funding to help support trying to get every single and underserved location in the state that does not have access to high-speed internet, access to high-speed internet. And so it has been a multi-year process. The county was engaged in this before I came on. This has been going on. The state on September 4th submitted their final plan to NTIA, so the National Telecommunications Infrastructure Administration, saying this is what we want to do. And the feds have given themselves a 90-day deadline to review, and assuming that they are supportive of the state's plan, that would put early December as the approval mark. And so hopefully shovels would be able to get in the ground starting early next year. Just to give a little bit more information, so the state has provided some information. Unfortunately, the state they have these really great GIS maps of all the different project areas across the state that internet service providers were bidding on. So you kind of knew, like, okay, so Comcast is bidding on this area, SpaceX is bidding on this area. Unfortunately, they took the maps down. So as I looked at the data, I couldn't be like, and this part of the county is getting this type of internet, this part of the county is getting this type. I imagine those will come back at some point, but I was hoping to be able to provide that to you. I could not. But what I can tell you is that statewide, about 35% of the total internet going in is going to be fiber. About 39% is fixed wireless. So, basically where you've got a antenna or pole or something and it's beaming internet in. And then 26% is low Earth orbital satellite. So that's satellite internet. The state is saying that 99.99% of all the broadband serviceable locations, so this is every house, business, everything across the state that could receive internet, is going to be getting high-speed internet. So assuming that this all goes within the 5-year timeline that that the state is aiming for, in the next 5 years, every location in Washington should have some kind of access to high-speed internet. And just to give you a sense of what's coming into the county, Comcast has a big swath. Well, they'll be putting in. Concept Communications is going to be servicing a bunch of locations. There are a number of SpaceX areas, project areas within the county, and then one is Amazon Kuiper, which was one I wasn't familiar with, but they also won a preliminary bid. And so I know we get questions from time to time from the community, like, hey, I don't have internet at my house, or my internet's really, really slow. This is hopefully about to be a step forward in improving access for those folks. So just wanted to give you all an update on that, because that's something we've been following along with, and make sure that the community was aware as well.
Thank you very much. This has been a long and somewhat tortured process to get to this point. It's big news. It's a huge benefit, I would say, especially for District 5, primarily rural, and everybody I talked to has had difficulty. So really excited to see this coming forward. The 1.2 billion, does the state have that in hand? Or I'm just wondering about the security of the 1.2 billion.
My understanding, based on everything that I have heard from the Washington State Department of Commerce and the State Broadband Office, who is administering this, is that these funds are still available and will be passed through the state once the federal government signs off.
Okay, great. We'll look forward to that. Any other comments on this? Thank you, Jordan. Then we're going to move on to, we're going to be going into an executive session, 9.1 pending litigation, RCW 42.30.110, paren 1, paren little I, for 10 minutes with potential after action. 9.2, potential litigation, same RCW, for 5 minutes with no after action. 9.3, potential litigation, same RCW, 15 minutes with no after action, for a total of 30 minutes. And I think we'll have a couple minutes to log in. I think that'll take us to 2:30. Okay, we'll be back then.
The chair has asked us to announce that executive session will be extended for an additional 15 minutes. An open session will reconvene at 3:45. Thank you. Correction, 2:45. The chair has asked us to announce that executive session will be extended for an additional 10 minutes and open session will reconvene at 2:55. Thank you.
Okay, council is back from our executive session. Are there any motions?
Yes, Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I move to approve the Purdue settlement and the other opioid litigation and authorize the county manager to execute any necessary documents to accept the settlements.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you for the second. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Thank you. We've concluded our business, and without objection, this meeting is adjourned.